Greetings. All Hallows Eve may have come and gone, but we're still feeling a little spooky. So we thought we'd tackle something a little bit more classy than our standard fare.
Today we bring you Nosferatu.
Nosferatu, eine Symphonie des Grauens, or Nosferatu, a Symphony of Horror, is a silent German expressionist horror film from 1922. Which Google tells me is a long fucking time ago.
The film is a loose adaptation of the Bram Stoker novel Dracula, and was directed by F.W. Murnau. It is considered a masterpiece and is profoundly influential, so as internet nobodies it is our solemn duty to mock this priceless work of art.
So gather round, my children of the night, gather round, and let us tell you this nearly century-old tale of darkness and blood. As the film opens, we meet our protagonist Hutter, as he and his wife Ellen live their carefree life full of kittens and flowers. Actually, this might sound really kind of morbid, but you know when you watch a 90s movie and you see a cat or a dog and you kind of get really sad because you know they're absolutely dead by now?
Yeah, watching something this old is a little like that, except instead of it just being the animals, it's literally everyone who had anything to do with the movie.
Anyway, kissing flowers, I don't know, whatever it is people did in the 1830s for fun.
We then see Hutter's boss, the estate agent Nock, who's a weird looking man. He's reading from something, it's probably not German. He calls Hutter over to discuss how Orlok, a count from Transylvania, wishes to buy a property in their fictional German town of Vis Bog. Nock decides the dilapidated crap heap over the road from Hutter's house will do the job nicely and sends him off to the Land of Phantoms, or Transylvania as a normal human being would call it, to seal the deal with the curious count. Also, this happens.
Hutter returns to Ellen to tell her of his upcoming trip, referring to Transylvania as the land of thieves and phantoms. Jesus, they really had it out for that one bit of Romania, didn't they? So Hutter, leaving his anxious wife with some friends in some kind of wife daycare, mounts up on the local horse and embarks on the long trip to Transylvania. Fortunately, this isn't Ultramarines, so the next time we see him, he's arriving at a tavern near to his destination. When he mentions that he's heading towards Count Orlok's castle, the innkeeper tells him that he can't go any further tonight because there's a werewolf roaming the forest. He's not joking or trying to con Hutter out of a night's room hire either, there really is a werewolf. Well, it's a hyena, which is nearly a werewolf. Kind of, I guess.
So Hutter rents a room containing the world's tallest bed and looks through some books, finding one about vampires. Okay, the book actually contains information to get the character and audience up to speed on vampires. They're bad, they drink blood, Malkavians are fucking weird, etc, etc. The next morning, Hutter awakes, is once again violently dismissive of the book. Okay, dude, seriously, that is not even your property. And boards a coach to the castle.
After a while, the coachman pulled to a halt, saying they will go no further. So our hero laughs at their silly small town ways and is left walking the rest of the way. Fortunately, he's picked up by a decidedly more shady coach heading in that direction. You know, having never actually used the app, this is basically what I imagine the experience of getting an Uber is like. Gotta go fast. Gotta go fast. Upon reaching the castle, Hutter enters and we're finally introduced proper to the mysterious Count Orlok, portrayed by Max Schreck, a man whose name literally means greatest fright. Fitting.
Orlok invites Hutter in and gives him a meal. Hutter, being a fucking idiot, somehow manages to gash his thumb whilst cutting bread. Although, side note, there's a clock in the scene and I want it. It is rad as fuck. Upon seeing the blood, Orlok starts acting strangely and tries to suck it. Hutter responds with a look that says, "Mate, can you not? Can you fucking not?"
Orlok asks if he will keep him company for just a little while longer as the Count sleeps during the day, to which Hutter acquiesces despite the whole thumb-sucking incident. Waking up the next day, Hutter seems in much better spirits, although he does notice 2 bite marks on his neck, which, in a letter to Ellen, he chalks up to being bitten by mosquitoes. Because he's an idiot.
Mosquitoes.
Well, it is the season for him.
Hutter gives said letter to a passing shoeless person and returns to the castle where, that night, he and Orlok sort out the paperwork for the property in Vis Bog. Whilst getting out some paperwork, a picture of Ellen falls out of Hutter's belongings, which Orlok seizes and remarks, "Your wife has a lovely neck." He then immediately signs for the house that, might I remind you, is right across the road from Hutter and his lovely necked wife. What's this red flag doing here? Oh, dang! There are just so many! Later that night, we see Hutter looking at the vampire book again and is seemingly starting to take its contents a little more seriously. A book that, despite being dismissive of, he apparently stole from the inn. Seriously, what kind of a prick steals a book?
Looking out from his room, he sees Orlok standing around like a creeper and shuts the door before cowering in his bed. The door opens by itself, and Orlok enters. "Hey man, you awake? Yeah, I couldn't sleep either."
Meanwhile,
Ellen awakes in a trance and starts walking along the balcony before collapsing into Hutter's friend's arms. She's having visions of the horrible shadow puppet show Orlok is putting on for Hutter, which the doctor puts down to a mild case of blood congestion, making us all wonder where he got his medical license.
The next morning, Hutter awakes and decides to figure out just what in the hell is going on. He explores the castle and finds a coffin. Opening it up, he finds Orlok resting inside of it and runs off back to his room in a fright. Later, from his window, he sees Orlok load up a cart with coffins before finally getting inside of one, sealing himself in it via the magic of stop motion, and riding out of the castle. Hutter decides to make his escape out of the window, but falls and knocks himself out.
Actually, now is probably a good time to acknowledge the tinting. So, you've probably noticed that the film keeps changing colour. You see, although films of this era were filmed in black and white, they were often tinted afterwards. This began as an early anti-piracy measure, but was eventually used as a stylistic choice. In Nosferatu, it was used to define the time of day, so amber is daytime or indoors, green is nighttime, and red is sunset or sunrise. You don't realise how effective this is until you see it untinted and spend half the movie trying to figure out exactly what the bloody time of day is supposed to be.
Anyway, Orlok's coffins are loaded onto a boat going to Vis Bog labelled as crates of earth for experimental purposes. The crew seem less than impressed by this and open one up, tipping it out onto the dock where, as well as the earth, a large quantity of rats emerge, and then slapstick happens. Meanwhile, it appears that Nock has been taken under the influence of Orlok, presumably via the medium of the weird-ass letter he was sent, and his subsequent behaviour has caused him to be locked up in an asylum of sorts. He's also eating flies while shouting, "Blood is life! Blood for the blood god!" Yeah, you get it. In case you couldn't already tell, he's this movie's Renfield. However, the guard's face in this scene is kind of creeping me out, so can we please move on?
Back in Transylvania, Hutter, who was found after his fall by some farmers and taken to a local physician, is finally well enough to leave. Thanking his carer, he heads home with great haste, it now becoming a race between Hutter on horse and Orlok by boat. Back in his cell, Nock steals a newspaper from the overly dressed orderly that informs him of a plague that is spreading around Transylvania and the nearby Black Sea ports, with victims all exhibiting the same peculiar stigmata on the neck. Sounds like Orlok's been a busy boy on his travels. This news, of course, makes Nockfield very happy.
Back on the ship, things aren't going so well. I mean, seriously, we get it, you vape. The crew have been falling ill and dying, leaving only the captain and the first mate alive. The latter decides to go below the decks and deal with the problem once and for all, beginning to hack at the coffins with an axe before Orlok rises from his and gives the poor chap a bit of a fright. Terrified out of his mind, he jumps overboard, leaving the captain and his ridiculous facial hair alone with the vampire. It does not end well. The boat pulls into Vis Bog's harbour and Orlok exits the lower decks via the medium of unnecessary stop motion. Mate, you could have just opened it, it's not like there's anyone left alive to show off to. Motivated by his master's arrival, Nock subdues an orderly and makes his escape.
Meanwhile, Hutter and Ellen are reunited as he finally reaches home just moments before Orlok shows up, conspicuously carrying his coffin around the town like a right tit. For fuck's sake, man, you can't even ride a boat normally, can you? Orlok reaches his new dilapidated home opposite the couple and enters it as if he's in a Bethesda RPG.
Did you just bite me?
No! It's mosquitoes.
It's the season.
That morning, the townspeople find the boat and the dead captain. With no time to mourn the loss of such an ostentatious hirsute pursuit, they find the ship's logs detailing the death of the crew. As well as delirious reports of seeing a strange passenger on the ship, the captain believed the rats in the coffins were carrying the plague we've been hearing so much about. This understandably causes a bit of a panic, and people are told to stay indoors and not transport the sick in case the plague is spread.
Sadly, this doesn't seem to help, and soon people are dying en masse from the plague. Back with Ellen, she begins to read the stolen vampire book, learning the secrets of the Nosferatu and that if someone is truly unable to escape a vampire's curse, then a maiden wholly without sin could save that person by giving her blood freely to the vampire, thereby distracting them from the sunrise.
And given that there's only about 50 minutes left in the movie, spoilers, lady! Hutter comes in and is like, honey, I told you not to read this book. It's Stephanie Meyer and she's fucking this terrible writer.
And then we see what I personally think is the creepiest shot of the film. It's subtle, but it kinda gets under my skin.
The couple look across the street to see the house now owned by Orlok, and right there in the window is the Count himself. He's not doing anything, just watching. Doesn't zoom in, he's just there. And because it's probably going to take you a couple of seconds to notice him, I don't know, there's just something awfully voyeuristic about it. It's creepy. Well done. Ellen and Hutter don't seem too pleased to see his ugly mush either.
Anyway, Ellen once again reads the vampire book. After she rereads the passage about the maiden wholly without sin, just in case you haven't worked out how the movie ends yet, we discover the town has started to blame the plague on Nock, believing him to be a vampire. After all, even before he went all Renfield, he had the sort of face that screamed, no matter how sick or depraved it may be, it's my fault. The townspeople start chasing him through the streets. Shenanigans happen. A scarecrow is involved. It's a whole thing.
Later that night, Ellen is awoken by a combination of Orlok staring at her through the window and chronic tit pain. She opens the window for him, but then faints. Meanwhile, Orlok is doing stuff. Weird stuff. Hutter leaves to get a doctor, leaving the door wide open because, well, did we mention he's a fucking idiot?
The Count sneaks up the stairs in one of the most eerily iconic moments of the film, or indeed, film in general, and enters Ellen's room where she's once again suffering from tit pain. And so, Orlok feeds.
But then, the cock crows and Orlok realises he's done fucked up. Just like the book said, he was distracted by this pure woman and didn't realise that the sun had started to rise. Orlok also rises, and we see, oddly for a vampire, he does actually have a reflection, and having apparently caught Ellen's tit pain, vanishes in a puff of smoke when the sunlight hits him. Nock, who was recaptured off camera, states, "The Master is dead."
Fun fact, this film is actually where the vampires die in direct sunlight trope comes from. Before then, it only weakened them. So put that in your fact pipe and smoke it. Ellen awakes for just long enough to see that she has indeed succeeded in killing Orlok before dying in Hutter's arms. The end.
So, is Nosferatu still a movie worth watching in 2017?
By today's horror standards, it's incredibly tame. The primitive nature of filmmaking at this point is obvious, and the original score often gives many scenes an almost goofy tone. Also, I imagine to anyone unfamiliar with silent film era acting, a lot of the stuff we've shown here will look a little silly.
But the thing is, watching films from this long ago, from nearly a century ago, is like peering into an entirely different world. The tone and pace are so different from what we're used to. You have to get into the right headspace to watch something like this. If you expect something that feels like a modern horror movie, you're gonna be disappointed. Hell, most of the conventions governing modern horror wouldn't be codified for decades after Nosferatu. Although it should be noted that the film was banned in Sweden until 1972 due to its excessive horror, believe it or not.
That said, the film does have its haunting moments, and Count Orlok is just great. He's creepy and inhuman and goofy all at the same time. There's a reason he's such an iconic character, even now. So yeah, even if we spent a lot of the time in this video making fun of it, Nosferatu is well worth your time to seek out and watch, even if for no other reason than to see a piece of film history, a part of the cinematic DNA from which all modern film developed. And to be frank, it's kind of a miracle you can watch it at all. You remember earlier when we said it was an adaptation of Dracula? Well, it wasn't an authorised adaptation, which means that the Stoker estate sued them and won. So not only did that mean that the studio, Prana Film, went out of business after only one movie, but all copies of the film were ordered to be destroyed.
Fortunately, a handful of prints survived and, as with many other films of the era, is now easily available in numerous different iterations. Some with different music, some tinted, some not. If you do want to watch it, we'd recommend you try to see a tinted version if you can. It cuts down on confusion when watching it, and it's almost certainly how it looked in German cinemas in 1922.
So, all that's left for us to say is a belated Happy Halloween, and did you leave the curtains open?
Thanks for watching, and special fangs, get it, 'cause I'm gothic, to our patrons, who are Badgerish, Battle Barge Lobsters, Billy, Kiva Brennan, Cohen, Dennis Davison Jr., Jab725, Jeremy Stern, King Trigon, Little Mikey, Longfang, Math Gibson, Mass Observer, Matthew Lynn, Mauricio A. Barrera, Maximum, Mega Slippers, Nat3 Despelas, Auto Xeno Agent, Pin Barlow, Plasma Dragon, Rabin, Riser DR, Rosalind Wells, Sam Stanfield, Scion of the Emperor, Sexual Yeti, Slow Elk, Smirky, Soul of Lemon, Stalker, T4RK4, The Gaffer 87, The Mechanite, Uneven Frostgun, Unfailing Eagle, Unit Y, Val the Knight, Willow Quinn, Zed, and Zach Adamson. Without you guys, none of this garbage would be possible, so thank you.